Are they coming in, or are they waiting?
They're out there having conversations in the hall, so.
All right, well, let's do our meeting. You good?
I'm good.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Welcome to the meeting. I will ask the Secretary Treasurer to handle the roll call.
Quick, James, can you ask, there's a few people out there that I know that want to come into this meeting. I don't know if they realize that we're up and running. All right, President Scott N. Horowitz.
Here.
Secretary Treasurer Ed Warner Jr. present. Richard T. Marin Jr.
Here.
Joseph McLaughlin.
Here.
Matt Parsons.
Present.
We have a full board.
All right. Welcome,
President.
everybody, to our meeting. Welcome to the folks that are on Zoom. The next trustee meeting that we're going to have is going to be April 1st, 2024, work session at 9:30 a.m., followed by our regular session at 1 p.m. We had some communications come in. I don't think we have time or the need for reading them.
Would you like to waive the reading of them?
I will second that motion. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
We have some discussions. First one up for the Southampton Historical Society,
Are they here yet?
the outside.
You want to move to solitude?
Yeah, let's go to the next discussion.
Yes.
Put this one on hold. Solitude Mill Pond Carp Removal discussion. You're from Solitude?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have a presentation for the board today?
Yes, I will not be the one presenting. Dave Beasley.
You can't speak from there, you gotta speak.
Speak from the podium or at the desk.
Yeah, state your name and sign in for the record.
So my name is Brendan Bixby. I'm from Solitude Lake Management. I'm the project manager of Eastern New York. Dave Beasley, who is going to be dialing in via Zoom, will be giving the presentation. I'm here to answer questions, or if there's bad
Okay.
audio, I can answer questions.
That's
and
great.
Write down anything, take notes.
Okay, so if you are answering questions, you'll have to obviously come back up to the microphone so that we properly capture
Yes,
the
sir.
information, okay? Are we ready to go with this Zoom presentation,
So
or?
if he's on Zoom, then he should be able to share his screen and show the PowerPoint.
That's
Okay.
what.
All right, so let's,
So I don't need the other presentation.
David Beasley.
David Beasley, do we have David Beasley?
we go, I'm having now.
Fabulous, thank you.
Saw a guy in a boat on the day. Is he setting setting gummit or something?
I doubt it.
Yeah. He was in for a couple hours.
Okay, got a little audio problem here.
Oh, he was down.
Can we turn the audio up on
A
the?
little more volume here in the boardroom?
I have it all the way up.
You do. Hello, sir.
Okay, now?
A little better?
All right. Well, I'll just speak up so you can hear me. Does that sound like a good plan?
That's
Yeah.
helpful, thank you.
All right. So, chime in if I'm yelling, but I'm speaking loud just so everyone can hear me. So, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk today about the mill pond and the common carp issue in particular, as well as anything related to the water body. So my name is David Beasley. I'm the Director of Fisheries for Solitude Lake Management, and I'm a certified fisheries professional with the American Fisheries Society. And then we've got Brendan Bixby there in person as well. He's a certified lake manager. He's going to help us a little bit today, answer any questions as he mentioned. So I am part of a large team of professionals working with Solitude Lake Management. We're a nationwide lake management firm helping stakeholders reach their goals regardless of what they are. In this case, water quality and carp removal. So jumping into slide 2, I don't know if Are you guys able to see the slides on the screen as they are?
We don't see you or the slides.
We see
Yeah,
you now,
we just
but
saw you.
It shows that it shows my camera here. Let me see if I don't know if the host has access to the slide deck. Let me, press a couple buttons here and see if this can pull it up. Well, I can continue for time's sake, but does the host have the presentation where they can put it up on the screen?
We have a PDF, but we don't have the PowerPoint presentation. We just have a PDF.
Yeah, it should be a PDF of the PowerPoint, so it should act similar. Are you able to put that on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to slide 2. There's only 5 slides. So slide 2, we are we're talking about the main issues here with Mill Pond, and basically, to sum it up briefly, elevated nutrient levels in presenting themselves in the form of poor water quality and algae blooms, and then common carp. So those are really the 2 main focuses. And if we switch over to slide 3 now, the proper approach to addressing the issues that the lake faces is using a data-driven adaptive management approach. And it's a multi-phase approach where the overall structure of the plan is fairly straightforward, but as you go through the process, you continually calibrate with data to make sure that you're spending resources, time, and energy on the most effective and efficient, most effective and efficiently to accomplish your goals, and also measure your goals, right? So any of these goals you guys have should be measurable, and you guys should know at any moment in time how well you are along your journey or process to accomplishing the overall objective. And so with this approach, first things first, you have to know the extent of the problem. And so in this case, there's a bunch of water quality data that is historical but provides a great deal of information, as well as there's some fish surveys or electrofishing studies that have been done, as well as some carp harvest efforts that will all fuel and feed into calibrating and assigning the right objectives and goals for a year. And so first things first, you need to assess the carp and fish community again and tag an individual carp, somewhere between 300 and 500 carp in particular. You tag those fish with a microchip ID card similar to a cat or dog would have. And that is the most vital step in this process, is to mark a certain number of carp so that as you're removing carp from the system, you can start gauging what percent of the population you're removing, and you can start modeling and projecting how many fish are there, and you can set obtainable goals to then know how well you have suppressed their population, and you can basically get confirmation that you've succeeded, and or what you need to course correct on to ensure that you do succeed. And so you tag those fish via electrofishing. You then set these trap nets that have a sensor in the net that tells you, or us in this case, when the carp are in the net. And so you bait the nets. It's this pen, think of like a 30 by 30 room basically, where these fish go in and feed, and there's a pattern to it, but we can see with clarity when the fish are in the net and when they're not, because the tags that are in these fish get picked up by the tag reader. And then strategically, you trigger the net to go off, the walls of the room come up all at the same time, and the fish are trapped. And then we remove them from the system, and you just rinse and repeat that process. And in that process of harvesting the carp, though, we can determine which ones were tagged and which ones weren't, and you start creating a data set that you can utilize to drive efficiencies as well as confidence in your solution. So those are the 2 main steps of removing carp. And then as you and I would say that's a bit reactive, right? So we're solving a problem that exists, but you want long-term success. You're not looking for short-term success. At least in general, that's most of the time. The objective is create some sort of long-term sustainable native fish population with good water quality. And so part of the process will be to restore the native fish community. That can take on many angles to accomplish. What I mean by that is the native fish population is out of balance currently, and part of that is because the common carp have taken up a disproportionate biomass within the ecosystem. So you remove the carp, but you still need to support the native species. That may be in the form of spawning substrate, that might be in the form of stocking, that might be in the form of improving the habitat. But understand there's some component there, and the reason why I bring this up is these species of fish, the native species, will eat the carp eggs and will help compete with those carp. And in return, it helps drive and provide long-term success that is sustainable and repeatable. And so it is a key component, and some of these things can be done simultaneously, but in general, understand that there is a holistic approach that is data-driven and adaptive. And so the last part of the puzzle is improving the water quality. It doesn't have to be the last thing you do, but it's the last thing I'm mentioning today. Understand that as long as your water quality is broken on some level, you're likely to have a less sustainable solution or outcome. And so just keep that in mind, that aside from removing carp, you have a few other things that need to be done to really create a good ecosystem. And so going into slide 4 there, just want to reinforce or restate that it's a data-driven solution and it provides measurable results. And I guess we have some great intel. Historically, you guys used a different firm to try to accomplish this objective, but a few shortcomings that process had was that none of the carp were tagged, which led to no population assessment as well as no knowledge of when the carp are in the traps. And without those key details, it's very hard to succeed. And so I would just say the project was set up for failure historically. The good part about having completed that is the data collected is still very relevant and can be used to drive success now. But understand, tagging the fish is vital, and having this intel, I kind of describe it a little bit as a surveillance state. The more we understand about these fish and can see where they are and when they are where we need them to be, the more likely we will succeed. So that said, we'll go to the last slide, open it up for questions or anything else on your mind. And obviously, Bixby's there to answer any questions you have after I sign off. I apologize I couldn't be there. I'm on the road. It happens to be a very busy time of year for us, so I appreciate you guys letting me do this virtually.
That's fine. Thank you very much for making the time as well. Gentlemen, do you have any questions?
Could you just go a little bit more into detail for the board? Not just, I mean, we spoke, Eddie and I had a really good conversation with these guys and kind of went a lot more in depth than this presentation about, as far as like the importance of the bluegill. You know, we mentioned the fact that there is going to be a fish ladder that is in the foreseeable future. But I think more importantly to the fact is the, you know, the amendment that is not yet approved by the DEC, but we have to make a very stern statement that, you know, that carp are not actually the problem. That, you know, they're just making the pure, you know, point pollution problem a lot worse. And the steps that you foresee in the future to actually combat the problem of the phosphorus and nitrogen, which is causing the algae blooms.
Correct. Yeah, let me talk to those points here briefly and then kind of steer me a little further if necessary. But So starting with the fish, and then we'll end up with the nutrients here. Although, to your point, the nutrients are the actual problem. Everything else in general is a symptom of the problem. And so going with the fish species in particular, these native species, so you can classify them as sunfish in particular, bluegill, and and similar species. There's, say, a half dozen of them, pumpkin seed, long-eared sunfish. There's different species. So they are nest raiders by, just naturally they feed on eggs of other fish. And they're pickers, so they just go around eating whatever opportunistically that they can. And so these species that can seek out and consume fish eggs, in particular the carp eggs, are beneficial. And they'll also eat small fish, small fry. And so having almost an imbalance with a surplus of those species to the point where they're hungry, right? So when you have a low number of fish in a lake, there tends to be an abundant amount of food, and they kind of get fat and lazy, so to speak. Where if they're overpopulated, these sunfish in particular, they kind of go on a hunger mission where they're seeking out as much food as possible where they can. And we want to artificially create that state for a few years, if possible, to help in this process of turning the corner. So you've got bait fish that help suppress the carp recruitment, right, the reproduction of these common carp. Another one of those bait fish species is golden shiners, which I didn't mention them, but they're another great tool we use all the time for this. So, and then you also have predator fish that eat the young carp, but ideally we want to consume the carp as young as possible, rather not let them get a few inches long before we start taking care of them. And I won't describe why right now because it's a long explanation, but understand there is strategy to what species of fish at what densities, and it'll change over the course of a few year period, and eventually you stabilize at a long-term desired state. But understand we're actually seeking imbalance. It's almost like a pendulum swinging, where right now it's on one end, we're gonna swing it all the way across to the other end, and then eventually it'll come back to the middle where we want it. But that's a 3 or 4 or 5 year journey. And then going to the nutrients, because this is the kind of the meat of your problem here in general, is water quality. Oxygen would fix everything, the right amount of oxygen. But there's a cycle that water bodies go through where the nutrients drive a lot of algae growth, and the lack of oxygen in the sediment. So you might have good oxygen throughout the whole water column at times of the year, but the sediments, when they run out of oxygen, the phosphorus comes out of the sediment into the water. The carp stirring everything up doesn't help the matter, but in general, there's a lot of nitrogen in the form of total nitrogen and ammonia in the sediments, as well as phosphorus, and oftentimes in the form of organic material that's not decomposed. It may just look like mud to you, but there's a lot of organics in it. So you get this nutrient-rich soil, the best way to describe it, that's saturated with water, so it kind of, I describe it as mud. If you were to provide enough oxygen to that material, it would decompose and fuel a bunch of algae growth, good algae, desired algae that fish eat. The fish then eat it, and it helps get it out of the sediments. And the more you do that, the healthier your sediments become, the less oxygen your sediments require, and you end up eventually having this chain of events where your system is very healthy and happy. And I probably didn't do the best job describing it there, but just understand improving the water quality in the sediments will play a tremendous role. And there's technologies that are advancing all around us in every walk of life, everything we do as humans. There's advancements in technologies, and water quality is no different. I would actually argue that water quality advancements are increasing exponentially right now, and we are working to try and get some of those advancements deployed at Mill Pond in the next 3 or 4 years. but we've got our work cut out being in New York State to pull that off. And with the fish ladder, I know it's somewhat irrelevant, but it's very much so part of a long-term solution, is the fish ladder will allow pelagic fish that feed on plankton into your lake on a regular basis throughout the spring and fall. So they'll come in the spring and they'll leave in the fall. Are you guys, is the audio still clear? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
you're fine, you're fine.
So this fish ladder, what it does is, these fish species such as shad or alewives, herring, there's different species out there that come into the ecosystem, they feed on all this plankton, and then they leave. And what that ends up doing is you're exporting your nutrients out of the lake in a way that's actually productive and beneficial and healthy to the ecosystem. You're not just covering up the problem. And I say that, I don't mean to be critical, but historically, a lot of our solutions we've had that we can use in systems bind up the nutrients and lock them up permanently or for a set period of time, say a decade or more. And that's the best tools we've had. And so you go in, you address the high phosphorus levels in the sediment by trying to bind it to where it doesn't become available to grow algae. But now with these improvements that have been discovered over the last few years, and they're very natural as could possibly be, are you guys able to still hear me?
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
Okay, I just got a text saying you couldn't, but, so anyways, what we want to do is use this fish ladder, leverage that opportunity to export your nutrients in a very sustainable, helpful way out of your ecosystem. That's going to come in time, but step one, get rid of as many carp as possible, start restoring the ecosystem to a more native state, and then step two, start addressing your water chemistry and sediment health. And the water is a byproduct. The unhealthy water or healthy water is a byproduct of your sediment. So I don't want to imply and draw too many specific assumptions or, I guess, facts with your water, but understand that most of the problems you're seeing in your water are really tied to the sediments that are in the lake. And the last thing I want to say on that before we open it back up is total nitrogen is incredibly important in this process, and we are on the verge of the first solutions that I've ever been aware of that truly address nitrogen and sediment. We've always focused on phosphorus because that's the only solutions we've had, and these advancements will play a role in that. So understand we're not quite there yet in New York, but that fish ladder, I would do your best to get that, in place over the coming years. I think it will play a big role in the health of the ecosystem. And there will be some modifications possibly. The one thing I'd mention, I guess we'll mention it here, but behind the scenes we'll talk more in depth, but we just want to avoid carp swimming into the system if possible with that ladder. Although, we have to talk to the folks who are designing it and building it, make sure we have that optionality.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen? So it sounds like, good
Yeah,
holistic-
so we're trying to be more of, rather than just cherry picking little ideas, like just come up with a baseline plan that we stick with.
Right, big holistic plan.
The last, and I know that Mill Pond at one time had the most freshwater clams in a water body in New York State. Have you utilized any of that for restoration and mitigation of algae blooms? Like, because I mean, there are some in there. It's been years since I've walked the edges to see how many freshwater clams are actually in. But is that a practice that's utilized?
It is. It is utilized regularly, but it would be done more on a native / ecological level. It's possible the clam population and mussel population could be seeded to try to promote it, but I would view that as if you build it, they will come type of a mentality. The more you improve water quality in the form of oxygen being present along the bottom, the higher probability that species like that can exist. A lot of the ecological imbalance does come from periods of the year when there's just no oxygen in parts of the lake. And all lakes are plagued with this. It's a good generalization to make. More information and time needs to be spent on analyzing the absolute best solution, but yes, to your point, those species are filter feeders. They will help clean the water and drive better clarity and redirect nutrients, right? The nutrients aren't as big of a problem as some folks are led on to believe. These nutrients are vital and they're required for the environment to really thrive. It's just when they're overabundant, then that's when you start running into issues. And it's this chain of events where when you have organic matter, you need oxygen to fuel the bacteria that decompose that organic matter. So really think of it like compost pile. You need a lot of bacteria munching up all those organic leaves or whatever's in the bottom of the lake. Could be plankton, and anything that's organic, bacteria help play a big role in breaking it down. If there's no oxygen, that process comes to a crawl. So our objectives are really provide oxygen, allow Mother Nature to decompose stuff and, really thrive and really break things down. And then the ripple effect of the chain of events takes care of itself at that point. It's really just getting the lake steered back in the right direction and then leveraging Mother Nature to provide a desired outcome. It's really not artificial. It's really not forced. It's really just understand your problems and implement long-term solutions that actually address the problem, not the symptoms. So when you go and you remove lily pads or you treat blue-green algae or you try to address phosphorus with products such as Foslock, some of that is just chasing a symptom of the real problem. There's lots of healthy lakes in the world. I was born and raised in New York, lived there for 25 years. Some of the most pristine water bodies in the country are there. But, if you don't have good oxygen down deep, you're not going to have healthy, clean water.
There's no aeration system there.
Yeah. So I think it's a good overview. Basically, we're looking at carp removal. Once we accomplish that to the point where we could introduce predators like bluegills and other small fish that raid the nests, coupling that with the the shellfish that are in there for better water quality and filtration, and then eventually getting the fish ladder to introduce the LYs and other pelagic species that would get into the pond. So we're basically recreating a food web that existed there many years ago, and reducing naturally reducing the blue-green algae. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, the blue-green algae has the ability to outcompete a lot of other organisms. Blue-green algae is technically a bacteria, cyanobacteria. So it just is outcompeting, and you're just going to set the stage for these more native, natural things to have a more level playing field. But everything you described there is exactly accurate. I would just expand on when you improve your native fish communities, understand it's not necessarily just stock your way out of the problem. Some of it could be, a lot of these fish spawn on gravel, for example. It could be you have 2 feet of muck everywhere, and so the eggs don't really survive very well. So it could be you put in a little gravel here and there if that's what's required, right? There's steps like that to help nudge the ecosystem in the right direction long term.
Just, if you could briefly, what strategy would you recommend to inject this oxygen into the muck? What would be effective in a pond of this size?
So there's technology out now that allows for, I'll try to explain this as briefly as possible, but basically, there's technology out there that turns water into oxygen. And what I mean by that is, water is simply two hydrogen molecules and an oxygen molecule. And there are natural ways to allow some of that water to split into oxygen and hydrogen. And we're not taking all the water in the lake and turning it into oxygen, just a very small fraction of it. And it just starts this natural process. So we're just trying to start, I use the word snowball effect because I think it describes it well, but we're just kind of getting the ball rolling in the right direction. And then photosynthesis, the process where these plants utilize sunlight and the byproduct is oxygen, they're able to fuel and provide a ton of oxygen to the ecosystem. We just need to get them up over this hump. And so there's a product out there, and there's a few products coming to market now, but one in particular is superior to the others, that it will provide oxygen to the water. And I'm not talking adding atmospheric oxygen. So you could aerate, you can just try to mix the lake, but that's not going to provide deep oxygenation to the sediments that are 12 inches below the water sediment interface. You really want to get oxygen down deep. And so there's a product out there, though, that just uses a mineral that kind of drives this oxygenation, really oxygen radicals in particular. So I don't know if that was thorough enough for you.
Yeah, kind of. Do you guys ever use any sort of like pelletized peroxides?
So pelletized peroxides are, the problem with the pelletized peroxide, yes, to answer your question, yes, we use them all the time, but usually as an algicide. A peroxide is very reactive, and I would say it's very short-lived, and it's aggressive. So you're not going to get long-term sustained success with peroxide very easily. In a vacuum, like on paper, it kind of makes sense that you could, but understand that the natural decomposition processes are incredibly powerful. It's kind of, I relate it kind of a little to the human body. The human body's unbelievably amazing. Like, the more you sit down and think about it, it's incredible that you can just cut yourself and it just heals itself back up. And it's whatever it is, you can sew on a new arm, whatever, but your body can regrow nerves and different other things. It's just incredible. And the lake is no different. We just need to get the lake healthy enough to where the microbial activity and the invertebrates and the aquatic life can kind of get things back into focus. And peroxide-based things tend to kill everything. They kill the good and the bad on some level. I guess they are selective on some level, but they're also not selective enough. So what you want is the oxygen without the mortality of organisms. And peroxide kind of provides that. At low doses, it does a great job, but we're talking, you're probably just scratching the surface with peroxide-based stuff. And it's very expensive. The cost to do it with peroxides, I think, would be probably inefficient use of resources personally. But we can map it out on paper and show that as time goes on.
A question for you. Based on your analysis of this, what do you expect to be a reasonable timeline that we could achieve a healthy water body here? What type of a yearly, how many years do you think it would take us to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from a healthy water body, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here when it comes to what the state, the DEC, although we'll start working aggressively in a good way, like with them productively, but prioritize it, I guess is a better way to say it, to get clarity and the ability to deploy these new technologies. But within 12 months of applying the technology to improve oxygen levels in the sediment, the lake would be tremendously more healthy. In within, say, 3 years of that process, it would be considered a very healthy ecosystem. The carp are a side effect or a symptom of some of the brokenness of the ecosystem, but also they are fueling it. It's almost, they're kind of reinforcing each other. The poor water quality reinforces the presence of carp, and the carp reinforce the presence of poor water quality. So the carp side of things, we don't have enough information on it, but I would assume 3 years is a good number to get the carp down. I think if I was being overly optimistic, I would say 2 to 3 years, but I think realistically, 3 years or so to get the carp really suppressed to the point where the ecosystem can kind of help suppress the carp further.
I mean, I raise the issue because we're dealing with the public that, frequents the area, lives around the area, and has fond memories of swimming in areas like this. And people, I've had people say to me they want to see, a resolution to these problems in their lifetimes. And, having been sitting in this seat for over a decade, I understand that there's no silver bullet to a lot of these problems. They're a lot bigger to get under control than they actually appear. And I think that when you're working in the environment that we are, on the financial aspects with awards and grants, you have to make sure that you've got a really good holistic plan and a roadmap to where you're going and commitment on funding so that you could see it to see the project through, to get the benefits to the public and the environment that we're all seeking. So I think that we need to keep drilling down on this to really figure out the best way to handle, getting this fixed.
I could circle back with you guys on the solutions right now, but we are deploying these solutions. We did all of our trials and studies last year on the new technology that I'm referring to here, and we are applying it to thousands of acres this year, and next year tens of thousands of acres throughout the United States. And so the data will be coming in quickly to deploy this technology. So I think we're at a point where we can start planning and mapping out the road to recovery. And I think that there's an opportunity to do this quite quickly. It just comes down to the DEC in particular giving us the green light to do it quickly.
Right.
And I would,
By this October, we could have tremendous results and impact, but I don't think it'll be able to, and I'm not talking the carp. The carp is a few-year process regardless, but if you improve, once you really address the sediment and water quality health, that is when the real improvement to the aesthetics of the lake set in.
Right.
And I think we can start providing clarity there and guidance. And I think it's obtainable. I think it's affordable. I don't think these solutions are out of reach. It's very refreshing to see that systems that are struggling have real solutions that are practical in the near future.
so I really appreciate the, so this goes out more to the public. I just do want to say that we're trying to develop a blueprint for the town of other freshwater bodies, using this kind of as the pilot project. We do want to progress forward with some form of carp remediation, and a couple of us on the board are going to get together to kind of really have a fine-tuned project, hopefully working with you on that. And, knowing that hopefully there is the DEC grants us permission to use something to break down the sediment and oxygenate the 12 inches of muck that are in the bottom of the pond. So I do appreciate it. I know we kind of get time constrained here, but I look forward to further dialogue between the trustees and yourselves for a further project.
Can I make one quick comment? I've been on the board for 18 years. The first year or so, the association from Lake Nodoma came to us asking to use solar bees. We put them in the first year. They're water circulators, in case anybody wants to know. The second year, we redeployed them in. The water level was much lower. Basically, they sucked up all the nutrients and became a broadcast spreader throughout the pond for all the nutrients. That year, we had a terrible fish kill. Fast forward to a couple years after that, working with Lee Lyman and some of the other people, Chris Goldberg, looking at the pond in a different aspect, maybe using Phoslock, initial application of Phoslock. In the springtime, we had 2 rain events, a 6-inch and a 4-inch in 1 week. Basically, the drainage was not put in there properly. The Phoslock program was pulled because the town didn't want to fund the second application. Looking at this proposal and what we've been doing looks to be a more holistic approach, taking in the account that the drainage has been done on the pond, looking to where we are, removing the carp, but also introducing some species that are going to predate on the eggs, introducing clams, and also introducing a fish ladder, I think is the way to go, because we're not using one silver bullet. We're doing a multifaceted approach, which I think the pond needs, and using CPF 20 to fund this is going to be huge, because we're going to have the financial assets to be able to continue this project for several years and look to a resolution of the poor water quality. So I want to thank you for your presentation today. I think it was very insightful.
Okay. That being said,
Thank you for having us.
okay. Thank you. Okay, I think we got to move on to other folks that are on the agenda today, other discussions. So thank you very much.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming.
Thank you.
Luckily, you didn't have to step in.
No.
Technology worked today.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, all right,
Yeah,
thank you.
All right, so we have another discussion on with the Southampton Historical Society. So I see you folks are here. If you want to, you're welcome to come sit here in the front with the board. I would just ask you if you grab the sheet off the
The
podium.
signage.
Signage sheet. If you bring it over with you, you can sign. You can sign in here. This way we make it all official. And
Makes it look more intimate.
yeah, this way.
Thank you.
The two of you could sit down. And,
Thank you very much. I just had knee surgery about a month ago, so I'm grateful for that.
Oh, good. So you're
you
moving
very
around
much.
pretty good?
down and relax.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between partial and full. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Father Patrick Edwards. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees for the Southampton History Museum, and I'm joined here today with our very new executive director, Sarah Kautz, who's helping us to sort of raise up some professionalism and take care of some things that have been long-standing in our organization. And in particular for us, and we were remarking as we sat down with you all here, that the Conscience Point Rock is something that's even on the seal of the town of Southampton. And some years ago, we became the custodians, if you will. I like to think of it as being the stewards of that property. And we've had a long-standing arrangement and a long-standing partnership with the town for not only maintaining and caring for that area, a very historic one as we begin to approach the 400th anniversary of that landing. And we're beginning to plan a lot of activities and things we want to do to really improve upon and make that a focal point for that anniversary and for our town. But also because as we brought her on board, we began to see certain organizations and agreements we had lapsed. And as we began to examine them, we wanted to be very intentional in how we handle these things, to make sure we're good stewards, but also very, very good partners. I've used that boat ramp down there. I'm conscious of all the things that go along there and how important it is to our community. Many of my parishioners at St. John's, where I'm a priest, is very active in utilizing that. And we want to do everything we can to ensure the quality of it, the safety, its maintenance. We're doing a lot environmentally right now. We've got a project underway to be able to redesign and landscape that area to make it more obvious what it is. Many people going down that way, even using the docks there at the marina, don't know of the historic significance of that land, even though we have a wonderful trail down there that we want to better and improve upon, but also so that people will feel as if it's something that's a real centerpiece for the town and for the museum. We want to make it a flagship for us. We claim it as one of our properties when we speak about the museum downtown at the Rogers Mansion, and also the Halsey House, which is the oldest wood frame building in New York State. And we also do things with the Pelletreau House here on Main Street here in Southampton. But what we wanted to do is introduce ourselves formally and to kind of just put ourselves forward as we begin to negotiate what has become a lapsed agreement between the town and the museum for the use, maintenance, and care of that property, especially the boat ramp area and the docking areas and the moorings that I know you all are very conscious of, and it's very important. We've had an opportunity to talk to people like Bill Pell that's given us a real education on the sort of commercial element that goes on there and how the boats can be using that forgive me, I'm forgetting, was not a bulwark, what would we call that?
The bulkhead?
Bulkhead.
Pier.
It was a B. I did, the bulkhead and how that's used, but also the moorings that are out inside that area just north of Conscious Point and things like that. So we're getting educated, and hopefully we're working this thing through with you all, that what we do will be something that will be a good, solid relationship. And with bringing Sarah on board, it's a chance for us to reestablish that good partnership with you guys, so we all know not only what we're doing, but what we're doing together.
That's great. Glad you came in.
Thank you. Sarah, would you add anything?
Yeah, it's been, I think, educational for all of us. But one thing, to go back and look at the history of the property, so just to kind of give a little background, it was purchased by the museum from the Reeves, so the old name is Reeves Landing, and the Reeves family are the ones that provided the acquisition. So that was done in 1910. And that's over 100 years that the museum has been the owners, and really, as Father Patrick said, the stewards of that site. So it was the first property the museum acquired. So as an organization, it was founded in 1898. Very familiar with the properties in the village, but those are actually not the first property. The first property is Conscience Point, and you can see why. It's on the seal of the town. It's incredibly, incredibly important. So as we approach the 400th anniversary, I think the significance of the site will start to come back into focus for all of us in the town and the village and our organization. So this is sort of, just the beginning of a conversation to make sure that we can do the best we can for the next 100 years, and just make sure everything's in place and as best as we can make it in the partnership we have with the town, which extends all the way back. I was looking at the trustees' records going back into the 50s, and there was a relationship with the town trustees to make sure there was access to the waterfront there. And of course, that access has evolved since the 50s greatly. And the water quality, we were just hearing about the carp and the water quality, of course, a massive concern at North Sea Harbor and at Conscience Point. So we want to make sure, moving forward as we plan ahead, that everything we need is in this agreement, to make sure that also the public can access that site, but do it safely, and do it in the most sensitive way possible. So it's great to.
Well, that's what we hear. I mean,
Yes.
you touched on basically the mission of the trustees, about providing public access and, retaining the heritage of our community and of our township, and we predate, everything around here. And public safety is always very important, so you want to make sure that people have the ability to access these areas and safely,
And I want to just add very, very briefly too, that, we reached far back, even going to the Shinnecock Nation and our Native American roots there. When we do this sort of paleo history that we brought out on that side, that area, we do canoe tours of that Conscience Point area that we use with Shinnecock natives who come along and help to kind of bridge that connection. That's the welcoming sign that we see everywhere having to do with our town. And environmentally, it's very important right now. We have plans for a bioswale to be able to install some things that will help to protect that. As that use that we're using there, it won't negatively impact the environment that we're working with, hand in glove with what you all have been
Right.
discussing already
And
today.
I see Mr. Matthews here from the hatchery, and they also play an important role in, what the trustees do and water quality and the heritage. And I think, when you have people, and I really appreciate you coming to the board for this discussion, when you have the collaboration of many people with a common goal, you could achieve a tremendous amount, as long as everybody understands. And that's, you can get it done. So I appreciate you. Is there anything specific that we have to get into, or are we going to, because it's a start of a conversation?
I mean, I know I've had a lot of complaints about people's access to that place ever since it's been, the hatchery's been added on, and then at one stage we're trying to maneuver they tried to make it so you couldn't turn in certain spots, and guys can't park their trailer. And now there's somebody that's from out of state that is running a kayak program and taking up the whole parking lot. There's getting to be taxpayers that utilize that ramp on a consistent basis that are starting to get kind of bent of the fact that they can't utilize the ramp. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as this
Absolutely.
is the public access for the freeholders of the town of Southampton, first off, you know, and then we can incorporate all these other great ideas as far as a hatchery, and as long as it doesn't impede the access to the water and somebody to be able to turn around and park their boat trailer, like, that's what the Board of Trustees is here for, is access and egress.
And let me say just very briefly, we've communicated this very much, and by the way, thank you, Trustee Joe, for being so helpful for us, but in communications, getting this dialogue beginning. But one of the things I want to say is we want to establish understandings. I hesitate to say building good fences, but that's a good way to look at it, to make sure we all understand, so that as we begin to expand out into those other things, we know that we're not encroaching upon understandings and agreements and expectations, both from the town and the museum. So this is, yeah, before we even talk to other things and other people, and you mentioned the shellfish hatchery, we want to first make sure that this relationship and understanding is secure before we begin to expand out the scope of our conversation, to make sure any other agreements or any other conversations that may happen will in any way interfere with what I think is obviously the preeminent one between the town and its uses.
And we're not the town, let's just make that very clear.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I mean,
Trustee,
no,
we-
We
are
also
the
have an
trustees, yeah.
agreement with the town.
There's a big
I'm
difference.
sorry, but
It
you
is
know-
a difference.
Yeah, I understand.
It's a
I
different,
pardon
a
my-
different complex set of issues, you know, but ours
Yes.
is making sure that somebody can back down there
Sure.
and safely back in their boat and safely bring the boat back ashore
Mm-hmm.
and park it and not have to like dance over hoops or like tell somebody to move, or, you know, like that's our primary purpose.
Understood.
And I just wanted to, so this has been a learning experience for many, many people, because, and maybe it's just because it hasn't come up in decades, really. The sort of time periods that we're dealing with this property and the uses have changed so much, but just to be clear, Conscience Point is privately owned by the museum. It's a 501c3 not-for-profit, has been since 1910. That means everything north of that fence, we also own that access road, so that driveway is driveway access out to the point, and then all the way out to the point. We have two agreements with the town. One is with the trustees, of course, to provide access to the boat ramp, and to whatever extent that bulkhead sort of secures that ramp area to make it safe to come in and out. My understanding is the trustees did install that boat ramp, pave it over, and it's been kind of redone over the years. Also the bulkhead, of course, and it's been a, you know, great productive relationship. But that driveway and that, you know, all of that thing to get to that point is our property, which of course we're a history museum. So our mission is history, culture, not so much recreational uses, maritime uses. So we're really depending on you guys to help us make sure that we have what we need there. And of course, bringing the public in 2024 means something very different than in 1924. There's much, much more intensive uses, commercial uses. It's sort of gotten beyond our capacity as a local history museum to, you know, really manage that at the level it needs to be managed, to make sure these things remain accessible in a safe way, in an appropriate way, that people are following the code there. And we want that to continue, but we really need your help,
Yes.
also the town's help. Because we have a separate agreement, just to quickly explain it, we have a separate agreement with the town board to provide access to the point. That's that walk out to the point where the monument is.
Settlers Rock.
Settlers Rock, yes. And so that's two separate agreements, which makes it extra interesting, but exciting because there's a lot of opportunities to work together and make this work for everyone.
Well, it's got to be, you know, complementary, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah, I really want to touch on the maritime heritage and the history down there. You know, you say it's different. It really isn't much different than it was when you purchased it. It was basically an access point for the commercial fishermen, the hunters, and all the freeholders and taxpayers of the town. And here it is, 115 years later, it's the same piece of property with the same uses. Might be a little bit more during the summer season, but I wouldn't venture to say that it wasn't used in the 60s and 70s, probably even more by the commercial fishermen that were harvesting bay scallops out of the Peconic Bays. I mean, there were times that you couldn't even get a parking spot for a trailer. You get down here an hour and a half before opening day of scallop season, you park halfway down the road, you know. So, you know, it's always been a very highly used area, and it's a unique area. We work with Mark Matthews, the Conscience Point oyster people, installing their oyster upweller and their, floating upweller. And that all started with the Eagle Scout project that, when I was first on the board, came to us to do an Eagle Scout project, and he had to raise money, and then he raised money and he put shellfish in there. And Trustee Pell got elected and he gave him an upweller. So all of a sudden, the little venture that we historically have done, because, Peconic Bay was probably one of the biggest oyster producing bays in New York State back in the 1800s and 1900s. So we are coming for full circle in what we do. And, promoting good access to that inlet, for the community, for the boaters, for everybody, it's really important to us. And working with you guys, educating the public. I think, you're a history museum, maybe having a little kiosk down there or something, what the history of what this place was and where it's evolved to would be really helpful for the public and for the people that come out here for the summer for vacations. So, I'm all for what, you guys are doing down there.
Hugely important. That is a lost part of our heritage out here. We think about the potato farms, but to know about our maritime history is profoundly important. Profoundly important.
We got the Tupper Boathouse there, which I worked so
Absolutely,
hard
yes.
with, so many people down there to, regenerate that. And it's just sitting there. It's a good place for raccoons to hang out. That's about it.
So far.
Yeah, well.
So far.
Well, the
Stay-
Reismans and everybody that were down there, I mean, you've had total support of myself and this whole board for that whole project.
Yes.
So not only is it the Settlers Rock and, the launching ramp, but it's the whole LY drain that runs up to the Big Fresh. There's a lot of things going on in that little body of water.
Yes, which is why we can't do it without you, which is why we're here to have this conversation today, and to make sure we're doing it holistically.
Right.
That it's not just us in our slot there, because we do know that we're part of this bigger picture. So we want to have those conversations and reach out and start that
Right.
conversation.
And the management of the access, I mean, it's becoming an issue, there's people utilizing the facility that aren't necessarily going through the protocol of having proper permits, and it's like, on one hand, I have no problem with it, because if you're taking young kids paddling and you're, exposing them to the environment, that's fine. But when you're impeding other people from being able to use the ramp because of it, it's kind of like one of these, what,
It's a balance
It's a
between-
balancing act.
It's a
because,
balancing a
just
shared
like the-
resource.
Just like the hatchery has taken a portion of the parking lot away, but it's also, I know in my heart, and I've oyster farmed, I was probably one of the first ones in Southampton to do it. Actually, I was not allowed to put my oyster boat in the creek and utilize that bulkhead, so I had to buy a house that was down the street. So, I mean, we've been driving at this for a long time to allow aquaculture in the town of Southampton, I was probably one of the first ones to actually do it and was not allowed to. So it's nice for me to see this stage, and then people are actually able to learn. It's not really an efficient system. Growing oysters in a hatchery is not really an efficient system in comparative to what Mother Nature can do if you massage her correctly. But it's very important for people to understand that there's a process, and there's a modality, and there's an education that needs to take place for people. So that's why I think but it's also impeding people's use of the ramp. So like you say, it's a give and take, and it is all important. But and I like that you like a dialogue. I think that's very important.
There are so many stakeholders involved in this, going all the way from, preservation to, everything that we're mentioning, including recreation and commercial use, and then preserving the historic element of it. And, we mentioned 1640. We're planning very much in the 250th anniversary of 1776 to try and incorporate as much as we can about the colonial era for New York and for Southampton especially. And so this is something that's already almost immediately becoming something that we want to begin to draw upon. So, yes.
So what can we help you accomplish? What is the specifics that we need to drill down on?
Well, the big resources available for us, I'll let my director say more about this, to help us have the resources like, town attorneys and things like that, that gives us focal points. And, I keep wanting to call you Joe because you're my friend, but Trustee McLaughlin, was helping us to begin to do is to make these points of contact that we know that we're talking to the right people. I made my stumble earlier about names and localities and jurisdictions to help us to be able to cut through that so that we're doing our most efficient job, because the stakeholders are numerous and we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, but also in the final analysis we've done our best job of formulating something that's proper and appropriate, and that's crucial for us.
Well, in history, we're all obviously very sensitive to this, all concerned about the maritime heritage. In the past, obviously respectful of it, and even more importantly, for the future, to make sure that that is preserved. And that's that's the whole mission of the trustees. And, I pride our board in being like the easiest and closest to the people, approachable. And that's why I asked the question. It's like, what is it specifically that we need to work on together, this agreement, to figure out how it works for everybody? We can address some of these issues, and as you say, take it on for the next 100 years or more. That's always my concern, is sitting here, as a trustee, now president of the trustees, is, we're very old board, and we're, as, trustee, Secretary Treasurer Warner said, even today, more important today, now that you have threats to public access and the environment that we hold in trust for all the people of our township, the freeholders and commonality that make us unique and great. So we want the same things. We just all has to make sense, addressing all the concerns and issues of the many stakeholders. So, is there another set of meetings that we need to have to drill down on some things now that the conversation has started?
Yeah, so, well, for instance, so some things that has come up, and speaking with your attorney a little bit with Trustee McLaughlin and even Bill Tell, there's a lot of investment going on in the marina, and Conscience Point, even though it is, like I said, the museum's property, it's kind of tied really just, completely to what goes on at the marina, because it does provide the access in and out of the water. So if you've been down there lately, you probably noticed, so one thing, that driveway and parking area is just, it really needs to get replenished. What that looks like, we're starting to work, so we got the water quality improvement grant, that's just for a design, and that's just us working with a landscape company to start to come up with designs for bioswales and other things. That's just design, so that's not implementation at all, and that's not trying to bring it into a discussion of how do we make that landscape work with whatever we want to make this site provide in partnership with the town and the access to the public that comes with that agreement. So what do we need in that parking lot area to bring it up to code, so to speak, to make sure it's providing?
I mean, bioswale's a tough one, because it's like, where do you turn a truck and a trailer around if you have a bioswale? Because I remember,
this is
I don't
the question.
remember when Josh came up with the brilliant idea to raise the bulkhead, which was unfortunate in a lot of ways, because it made it really hard for an oyster farmer to unload his boat, because he just made it, that much higher, and you've increased the whole grade of the parking lot up there, and then they tried to make it so please don't use the old existing dirt ramp, because we're trying to build a for want of a better word, not much of a bioswale, basically a puddle,
Yes.
I understand, but it's like you're kind of trying to put a lot of things in a small area, you want a bioswale, and you want an oyster hatchery, and then you want a launching ramp, and then you want, kayak people coming down here. You really kind of, you're gonna have to kind of make some decisions of exactly what you want this place to be.
And that's an important question for us to be able to arrive at, I think, almost first. And
Yeah.
that's why we're coming to you guys in this particular environment, is because to understand the scope, we said there's numerous stakeholders. What is the scope of our stakeholders? Because we have to begin to make compromises and decisions on what can and cannot be done in that relatively limited space.
Right.
We start going down.
I think we're leading to a whole new set of meetings.
I think so.
But just one question, is that property, so the Conscience Point Marina and are they both the
No, the one's the town.
One's the town and one's the historical.
Where that
Yes, yeah.
fence is at the south end of the parking lot?
Yeah.
That's town.
I'm just wondering if there's any way, and honestly, this is a town question, if they could utilize some of the storage that's in that kind of,
Parks
the
Department
Parks
storage.
Department storage
Yeah.
for some of this oyster gear, so we can free up some space, because it's really, it's been hitched over, and then another guy comes in, and then we have a boat there that's abandoned there, and we, you know, like, if we could start to utilize a little bit, because I was an oyster farmer. I know how obtrusive and how much that stuff can take over your yard. I'm first to understand how much that, especially in the off season. But in the same breath, it's kind of like, okay, guys, you know, like, I know you're trying to do a good thing, but you're gonna have to outsource this stuff to another area, especially when it all comes in. You know, when there's not, you know, because as you take oysters out of the system, then that, you know. So that would be, I think that would help a lot of issues, you know, and then it would gain a little bit more parking, and then we could kind of, you know, but that's just my 2 cents.
Series of meetings.
Well, one thing, see, one thing you really
Make
have to
myself available.
understand is this whole area, any project you do, you have to take in accommodation that it floods terribly. So if you put a bioswale there, you know, it is what it is for a reason. It's a dirt, no asphalt, it permeates. You get a bad northeaster, it floods, the rack lines at the fence, the marine maintenance guys go down and take care of it. We have our marine maintenance guys go down there with their bobcat, smooth it out. And it's simple, and sometimes, you know, as, you know, it's not the most beautiful looking, but sometimes it's functional. You put these bioswales with plantings and all kinds of fancy curbing and stuff like this, one northeaster down there, it's gonna be over by the Conscience Point Oyster Company, pinned against the fence. Because I've been down, I'm a bayman, I started working that in 1975, and it really isn't much different other than the launching ramp, the Conscience Point Oyster Company raising up the bulkhead so that when they have these floods, that their vehicles and their stuff doesn't get washed away. And, you know, it's a unique area, and, you know, when the water rises, it goes on the road, it goes back at low tide. So anything you put there that's gonna impede this or change the dynamics down there, and it's really gonna, a bioswale takes up a lot of room, so, I mean, you can't park 20 or 15 vehicles down there. So you know, do we want the most parking area for the people of the town? Or do we want to have limited parking area, a nice area where you need a landscaper to come down here and take care of it, and the first northeaster you get, it's going to be like, well, what do we do? You know, there's a lot of questions that's got to be really, you know, looked at. And I think the first thing is to get someone down there, an engineer, to see the elevation of your parking lot, where it plays into these floods, because, I mean, I'm assuming it probably flooded 3 or 4 times this past winter.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, and the way it is now, you'd never know it floods because it goes away. But if you put all of these other things that catch, would you like to, Mark, come up here? You
have to come here or there.
One of your, you can sit up here.
Right,
Yeah.
you gotta
But-
state your name for the
Mark
record.
Matthews of 223 Shore Road. Pursuant to this thing about elevations, you couldn't be more right. And Arrayas Design has a grant to do some homework for the drainage for the whole area. And fundamental to them doing that is getting all those elevations. But not just those, in the surrounding area, because there's water that comes down Conscious Point Road, and they're gonna wanna deal with that too. So I think that there's a good group on hand to do this work, and they're fully aware of what the problems are, and I think, I'm looking forward to seeing what they have to say.
It's
about
like
that.
we've just learned more and more as a trustee board, you can't just raise one guy because it ends up screwing somebody else. You know, like if you raise the parking lot there, then the water's gonna wanna go through the marina.
Well,
You
it's
know,
gonna-
like, cause
gonna
it
come in
comes
from
in
Howard
and then it's
Reisman's
gotta go
house.
out, so like, you have to be very careful when you raise the grade somewhere, it's gonna impact somebody else considerably.
Right, so
With-
let's reserve, let's take a look at the data that this group is putting together and see what this plan looks like, and then we will have another set of meetings. and then we'll just keep going on. Is there anything today that we need to accomplish that's more specific, other than the start of the conversation of a, more of a holistic type of a plan we're all looking to achieve?
I can say accept our thanks and also to accept our good intentions. We're here to work with all involved to make sure that this goes through in such a way that serves our community best.
Okay, so we're aligned in our mission.
Let me just add one thing, that Arrayas Design, you know, is a great company. They were appropriately chosen to do the study, but they had, for several years, volunteered their time and effort to contribute to the improvement of the Tupper Boathouse property. So they've been involved with that too, and have a lot of knowledge about that. I mean, I invited them to join, and they were gracious enough to come in and help and donate their time for that.
Yeah.
So they see the whole property as one property, meaning the town's property and the museum's two properties. So I think we've got the right people.
All right, so more information to be continued.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all for your time.
And
your
our
attention.
public hearing that we're going to hold today is pertinent to your property and moorings that we historically had used there. So if you want to stay around for that and get a little education on that
Yeah, great.
mooring part, so.
Not a requirement, it's an option.
The best we can. Thank you all so
Thank you
much.
so much, appreciate
Yeah,
your
yeah,
time.
thank you.
Have a great one. Okay, so we have a couple of more discussions on here. Hey, Mark, Mark may need to sign in, I don't know if he did. Mark, could you sign in?
He's going to be speaking. at
Oh,
the-
he's going to speak again?
Yes.
Okay. We got another discussion.
Yeah, the Cornell seating, 2024, I asked the office to pull up the previous contracts from 2022, 2023, so that we could review what we had done as far as purchasing shellfish stock to reseed the waters. Has anybody had a chance to look at those past contracts? And if not, I'd just like to hold this over until next meeting where we can review the contracts and maybe have a discussion as far as what would be appropriate funding for this 2024 seating season.
It would be nice to review the contracts and hold it until
Okay,
another
yeah.
time to talk about it.
Sorry, I was a little busy in the
Yeah,
offices.
yeah,
I
yeah.
tried, but
No,
It's all right. Let
it'd
that
be
go.
nice to look over them via email and then.
Go to the next one.
I got
Yeah,
it 6 months ahead of where we were last year, so.
Nice.
And 2024 fish stocking, I know we got one quote, Jessica, am I correct?
We got 2 quotes.
We got 2 quotes.
Yes, let me pull them out.
And I have not had a chance to review them, sorry, but I don't know if the rest of the
No,
board
that's
has
okay.
either.
They just came back last week. It looks like one was from Cold Spring Harbor Fish Hatchery
Okay,
for 1,370 9 to 10 inch brook and or rainbow trout, which is $3.65 a unit. The other one is from Fish Haven Farm, and they their quote is for 640 rainbow trout, 10 to 12 inch, for 5,000 at a rate of $7 a unit. So we're looking at 7 versus $3.65.
But the survivability of the bigger ones.
well, the smaller ones we usually get, because we usually get a lot more of them, that we could spread them out through a lot of the ponds. And the small fish seem to survive very well, and, people that have caught them. So, I mean, that's why we usually go with the smaller fish in a more of a quantity. So, I mean, it's,
Makes sense to me.
so.
Go with that.
I don't know if you
Go with your
guys.
traditional, go with the
Go
traditional
the
plan.
smaller.
We've
Okay.
increased the budget on this. It was,
So we did
Smaller is
increase the
more.
budget because some people have come to, before us, asking for us.
well, they also said they were gonna perhaps help do some,
But-
you know.
But we increased it internally, so I think a little bit more than last year, and that's what we can do.
The
I
trouble is,
believe.
everybody wants to know the day that they're being put in.
I will tell them 2 weeks after the fish are released, so that way they can have, disperse. That's the goal, because I was talking to a couple of the providers in the past. When they let them out of their little tank and they throw them into each one of the ponds, they'll stay there for 3 or 4 days because they think they're gonna get fed. And at that point, you can just pick and fish, shoot fish in a barrel. That's not the
They get
goal.
exploited.
That's not the whole point.
That's not the point.
So,
That's
all
not the
right.
point, but they're
So-
always like, they want to know.
We do have a resolution on authorizing Cold Spring
Okay,
today,
so we will take that at a later time.
yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's for the fish stocking.
Yep.
Okay, so now moving right along here, we have a public hearing, as you had pointed out, for the management. Let's see, notice the public hearing on amendment of rules and regulations for management products of town waters, the Blue Book, considering amending the management and products of the waters of the town of Southampton, Article 5, Section 36, moorings. I would like to make a motion to open a public
I
hearing.
will second that.
Seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, who is speaking on this today? We do not have special counsel here.
You wanted the table, so.
No, I think, is there anybody from the public that would like to address the mooring, the proposed amendment to, well, it's not really amendment, it's just a addition to the,
You would like to speak, Mark?
Sure. Again, it's 223 Shore Road, Southampton. I talked with Ed and Bill about the possibility of getting some mooring stakes or moorings out for dinghies and small boats to the north of the sand kayak launching area, where historically there have been such stakes moorings for dinghies and small boats that go out in the harbor. And it seems like something that's missing, and it would give access to more people who anchor the boats in the harbor. And I thought it'd be a great thing to do. Otherwise, I mean, how do they get out there? They just drag their dinghy up on shore and leave it against the fence, which just adds to the clutter, it takes up space. So Ed liked the idea and kind of ran with it, and I was grateful. So,
yeah, I mean, we already,
You know, I also spoke last week, right?
We did.
Yeah.
Joe and I reviewed this at the North CCAC meeting last Tuesday, which is great.
Who's gonna be responsible for maintaining the moorings and/or the breakaways and/or the snap poles and/or?
There's two approaches to this, as I see it. One is to put a 6x6 out in the water with an overhead line going to a 4x4 post on the shore. Or I discussed at length with Barley Dunn, who runs the East Hampton Shellfish Hatchery, is an experienced boat person. The way they do it in East Hampton is they put a 30-pound Danforth with a mooring ball out there and run a line to shore. I think that's probably the better way of doing it. But that way, the owner of the mooring stake would be specifically told where he has to set his Danforth of a certain size, 30 or 50 pounds, and that would be that.
yeah, I mean, this is something that we've utilized in Mill Creek, Noyak Creek, and Woolly Pond. It's giving access to the community without bringing a truck and a trailer down. You can ride your bicycle down there, hop in your boat, and basically go out to your, you know, with the dinghy, or if it's a small boat, to
Just
your
go
vessel.
fishing,
Yeah, I know that one of the questions that was posed to me is the size of the, maximum size of the vessel. I know back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, there were a lot of commercial fishermen, they didn't have trailers, baymen, and they had a 16-foot boat or an 18-foot boat. They would just put one of these mooring pilings out, and that would be the way they would go clamming and fishing in the bay. So I don't know if the board has an idea on the size of the vessel that we would allow there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think 18 foot would be the max, I mean.
That's pretty much what I
That
think
would be
we
the
do.
max, an
That's-
18-foot Sharpie or something. I know, I mean, like, to Ed's point, like, basically, all he did was take your motor off the boat and sink it for a hurricane. I mean, that's how you went through a hurricane, and then when the hurricane was done, you just bailed the boat out, put the motor back on, and it went, you know, so there, things were a lot simpler.
Well, it could still be that simple,
Yeah.
if we allow them to be.
Yeah, so I would say that, Stakes are a failure. I mean, I've had pound traps. I've had pound traps in Peconic. They fail. They snap. They, like
Ice.
Ice. I don't I guess we'd call that almost like a French mooring. It would almost be called a French mooring instead of a stick mooring like they used back in the 50s. But
What's the dimensions on a stake?
6 by 6 would,
6 by 6.
you need at least a 6 by 6.
A 6 by 6 is not going to do it.
I was gonna say,
Not
it
with the
sounds,
northeasters that we have.
sounds like it needs to be a little more than that.
Well, an anchor, a 50-pound damper anchor would more than,
More than suffice. It would it'd
Suffice.
probably take up. It would take a strain better because I mean, we know what that place can be like in a northeaster, and it's not really a pleasant situation with pound trap poles holding.
No, I think the 50-pound dampers would be the superior way and the simpler way of doing it. It can always be
Yeah.
lifted up, no problem.
well,
And
you
it'll
can,
be strong, because there'll always be some tension on it.
Yeah.
So it'll always be tucked in.
well,
and
running
the
into a mooring ball versus a 6 by 6 with a boat at night would be a lot less damage too.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right,
I know, like in other harbors I've seen where they got the mooring poles, they're much bigger.
the mooring poles,
Yeah.
you don't, yeah, but I
I'm
mean,
just saying, that's why I was,
yeah, but I mean,
go with the 50-pound and,
yeah, but
The mooring
it's
poles.
also,
Yeah.
it doesn't interfere with the view shed at all.
Exactly.
It's more traditional with a mooring ball
yeah,
and be consistent to what we approve as far as moorings.
I think
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
a good. I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah,
That's good, I agree.
And we could charge a similar price that we charge for a
Same
regular
as a
mooring,
stick mooring. Yeah.
a regular mooring, so.
People would thank you for it, frankly.
Well, we're also gonna get rid of 6 trailers, so there'd be more room for other people to park there.
Well, and abandoned dinghies, like you say, that are
Yeah.
all over the
There
parking
were
lot.
3 or 4
you know.
last summer,
Yeah.
all summer long.
Yeah.
But it's also got to be understood too that if your dinghy breaks away, or it's your
Well,
responsibility.
isn't
the
that the
mooring
case
fails,
when
it's
there's
your
a mooring already? Someone's boat, that's not your fault. If they're mooring, the boat breaks away. It'd have to be stipulated.
Well, no, they put insurance on their mooring in their boat, so
Yeah.
that would be just no different than the other moorings that we have in the bays. So, yeah, all right,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you,
as
Mark.
usual. Anybody else from the public that would like to address the Board of Trustees on this matter at the public hearing? Anybody on Zoom have their hand up to address the board relative to this public hearing concerning moorings?
No one on Zoom.
No one on
With
Zoom?
these anchors, they'd have to be hauled in the fall and
Yes,
reset in spring.
they'd be seasonal, just like a mushroom anchor on a regular mooring.
All right, so then I think,
I'll go over, do you want
Well, I mean,
I think we should, I mean, I'm fine with, I did a lot of research and we've had them in the past. I don't see why we need to hold it over. I think we could just,
you want to
Advance
close it.
You want to close it with or without a public comment period?
I don't
There's a
think we-
notice of adoption on today.
So
Yeah.
then, there's no one from the public that's objecting to this. It's a practice that's been done prior, and it is kind of relative to what we do, and I would suggest that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
All right,
Aye.
all right, thank you.
Okay, now let's go to public portion. So if anybody would like to address the board at public portion here or on Zoom, now is the time to speak for a few minutes. And if not, then we'll move right on to our applications. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I thank you very much. Let's move right along. We'll close public portion, move right along to the application for permits. Board of Trustees hereby waive a public hearing on the following applications because it has been determined that the following projects do not raise a significant degree of public interest or public input is not needed to aid in the decision-making process. Trustee Warner.
All right, trustee resolution 2024-67. It's a renewal of application, the second one of 361 Beach Road LLC, 361 Beach Road, Hampton Bay, Suffolk County Tax Map 900-364-1-3, body of water, Shinnecock Bay East. We've approved this, and this is the second time it's coming up for a reapproval. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded, trustee McLaughlin. All in favor?
Aye. Trustees Resolution 2024-68, application to GR Dune Realty Holdings LLC, 187 Dune Road, Bridgehampton, CTM 900-259-01-24.5. Body of water is the Atlantic Ocean. This is just I believe this is a application for a dune restoration.
Recommend its approval.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee Warner. All in favor?
This is trustee resolution 2024-69, general permit trustee. This is the application of Northampton Colony Yacht Club, 14 Noack Bay Ave, Noack, New York, SCTM number 900-4-3-23.1-15, body of water Mill Creek. This is a pretty important project to stabilize the entrance over there, so I would ask for.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, application of Eva Shea Family Trust, 285 Surfside Drive, Bridgehampton, New York. Body of water is the Atlantic Ocean. This is the item we spoke about earlier, trying to get the dune restoration over by Sag Pond done before the plover season. Ask for a second.
Second on it.
And just for information, that is resolution 2024-70. Was seconded by trustee Warner. All in favor? Aye.
All right, my turn. We got trustee resolution 2024-71, renewal, the third renewal of a permit for Fisher Organization LLC at 326 Royal Avenue in Flanders. Yeah, this is an extension. Renewal, can I get I recommend the approval of this one?
I'll second it.
Seconded the third renewal application by trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
This is trustee resolution 2024-72, application of Southampton Town at 4 Beaver Dam Creek in West Hampton. I recommend the approval for this permit.
Second.
Seconded by trustee McLaughlin. All in favor?
Aye.
Trustee resolution 2024-73, application at 187 Evergreen Road in Flanders. I recommend the approval of this application.
Second.
Seconded trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I have an important resolution. It is 2024-74. This was for the withdrawal of a notice of claim filed on the town of Southampton and a rescinding of resolution 2024 TRUS-65. I'm going to read it because it's an important resolution. Whereas the trustees passed a resolution 2024-TRUS-65 authorizing the commencement of a litigation against the town of Southampton, and whereas a meeting of the parties has resolved the issue, making the necessity to litigate this question satisfied, and whereas the town of Southampton has passed a resolution reversing the changes made in their 2024 operating budget, now therefore be it resolved. Before we vote, I would just like to thank the town board and the supervisor for having a meeting of the minds and taking a wrong and making it a right. I believe that's what's in the best interest of the people of the town of Southampton. They did a great job. My hat's off to the supervisor for working hard. My hat's off to our liaison, Councilman Pell, for working hard, and my hat's off to the town board for recognizing that this wrong needed to be righted, and I'm very appreciative, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work collaboratively with the town board in serving the people of the town of Southampton as best as this board can for public access to the environment and any other preservation of maritime heritage or any other issue that comes before us, and I'd like to make the motion to.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee McLaughlin. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, this one has nobody on here, but it's trustee resolution 2024-75 under central purchasing and contracts compliance, and authorizes purchase of construction equipment and/or dredging services from H&L Contracting LLC and Laser Industries, Inc. using the Suffolk County contract.
I will second this one because it's an important contract that allows us to drain and manage Mecox and Sag Pond.
Okay, seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
So this is trustee resolution 2024-76. This is to authorize the opening of Mecox Bay and Sagaponack Pond.
I'll second that one.
seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have trustee resolution 2024-77, authorizing the president to sign an agreement with the Research Foundation of the State University of New York for Sag Pond Inlet Aquatic Restoration.
I'll second this one.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
We have trustee resolution 2024-78, authorize president to sign an agreement with the town of Southampton for Lake Agawam stormwater management.
I'll second.
Second, I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have trustee resolution 2024-79, authorizing the president to sign an agreement with the town of Southampton for Sagaponack Pond aquatic habitat restoration.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2024-80 authorizes the president to sign an agreement with School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences at Stony Brook University, SOMAS, for the installation and operation of environmental observatories in Mecox Bay. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Marin, all in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2024-81. This is authorizing the opening of Mecox oyster dredge season to 6 weeks and commence the season on March 20th, 2024.
I'll second it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain because I harvest them.
One abstention, the harvester. Okay, we have trustee resolution 2024-82, authorizing the purchase of Jackson hats for the trustees. Has executed a contract with Fisher Signs and Shirts, has supplied the trustees with a quote of $2,122.73.
I'll second this one.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2024-83 authorizes the purchase of 2024 labels. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded, trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye.
2024-84, authorize expenditures for stocking of ponds and lakes with brook and rainbow trout for the 2024 season. We just had this discussion. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2024-85, notice of adoption of Blue Book A340, amending the management and products of the waters of the town of Southampton, Article 5, Section 36, moorings. This is another public hearing that was just held. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2024-86, warrant number 4 for 2024 for the sum of $23,368.41. The check register reads as card member services, $4,834.23. Call ahead, $150. Government Connection, Inc., $381.51. Inner Science for the total of $521.01. Joseph R. Lombardo for $5,700. PSEGLI for $213.84. Sawcliffe Stearns LLP for $9,706.63. And William B. Mason Company LLC for $1,861.55, for a total of $23,368.41. Recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to walk on two resolutions.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
First one is trustee McLaughlin's
Yeah,
resolution.
Let's walk on, trustee resolution 87 of 2024. This resolution is to authorize the trustees to enter into a 10-year dredging permit from InterScience to speak with the DEC, ACE, and the other services. So this is for the president to enter into any agreement henceforth. So can I?
I'll have a second on that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Walk on number 2, recall and amend trustee resolution 2023 TRUS 213, whereas the town of Southampton trustees resolution 2023 TRUS 213 adopted July 17th, 2023 authorizes the payment of InterScience for modification of dredging permit for Far Pond 2023, and whereas the amount of the payment to InterScience was listed as $5,000, now for it be resolved that the resolution for 2023-213 shall be recalled and amended to list the correct amount of $5,600, and therefore it be resolved further that the all other content of trustee resolution 2023 TRUS 213 shall remain the same. I need a second on that.
Seconded, trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, I know we've had a busy day between the two sessions. Is there anything that we missed that needs to be brought up in the public portion of this meeting before we go perhaps back into an executive session?
I just wanted to add, I just was reading over quickly, there's a 14-foot limit on these moorings, like, that's written into it already.
Okay.
So,
That's
I mean, that kind of answers.
that's satisfactory.
That answers, people can't get overboard on it.
Okay.
It's satisfactory.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else that,
Any updates on SAG or Mecox or anything?
SAG is doing great, Mecox is gonna be popped tomorrow.
Okay. I know a lot of people from the public have been asking me, and I was telling them that it should be the beginning of this week, weather depending, so it looks like we've got a good weather window, so we should have both of them flowing well, and hopefully they'll flow for...
Way to go for it. So, I mean, that dog leg did show up a little bit, but hopefully, like I did with SAG, I just had the machines kind of cherry pick their way back as it was kind of
Draining.
open itself
Yeah.
out, so that way we just kept taking the high spots out, and then it just kind of did its thing.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, we have plenty of water in Mecox.
and we're opened up well ahead of the bird season starting, so this way, we'll
That's
be in
all
the
out of
best
the way,
possible
cleaned up,
position,
and-
exactly. So
Yeah.
Discuss the dredging of the till the next time. It's fine.
What is it?
It's with the LNAC with the
Channel Pond.
Channel Pond?
yeah.
Yeah, we're working on that, just to delineate. I mean, it has been established that the trustees have control over Channel Pond due to the conservation board meetings when that piece of property that was formerly owned by Edwin Burnett was sold or it was built, but we just have to finalize everything but it looks like we will in the near future go forward with
Channel Pond.
starting that project at Channel Pond, which would be very
I
helpful.
did speak with Bill Knack about it, and he's very enthusiastic about it, so.
Good.
Well, it has been dredged multiple times over the history of the trustees. It hasn't been dredged in about 20 years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Yeah, and that means that it's filled in considerably, and it doesn't have any exchange when the bay gets low. So if we can knock it down about a foot to 18 inches, then you'll have an exchange, whether it's a high bay or a low bay.
Yeah,
So which is good.
yeah,
get rid
keep
of-
the blue-green algae out
Yes.
of the way.
Yes, very important.
Anything further, gentlemen?
Good to go.
No. Well, is there a need for further executive session?
There is, a
Okay,
short
so
one.
at this point in time, I will request that we adjourn the general meeting here and go into executive session for the purposes of discussing personnel and litigation issues. It was seconded by trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a nice afternoon, everybody.